Yesterday, every Democrat in the Senate and both of the so-called independents, who are also secret Democrats, voting against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. Every single one, even though this issue has 80% support by the American public to not let boys into girls' sports. It's insane. That alone is a huge winner and winning moment for Trump tonight. Thoughts?
It's clearly a very popular policy nationally. This is perhaps one of the issues where Donald Trump, especially with respect to, by comparison to Democrats, has just been able to kind of lap his opposition. There are, I think, plenty of people like weirdo libertarians who have this concern about whether or not the federal government ought to be getting involved. And it is rather ironic and surprising to hear Democratic senators making arguments that we have made for years and years and years on a range of issues, that the states and the local government ought to be making these fundamental decisions about what's happening with specific kind of narrow issues. And this, in many respects, is a kind of specific and narrow issues. There are particular cases that have risen to national attention, as you just pointed out. But for the most part, I don't know that most people experience a lot of this stuff in their everyday lives. And the question that I've asked since Donald Trump's inauguration and the executive orders pertaining to this is whether or not the objective ought to be to try and pass executive orders or even to pass a new federal statute that is going to outlaw certain things, as opposed to trying to make certain that there is a kind of neutrality, that universities and the NCAA aren't trying to push particular values on parents and families and communities and even players, and incentivize things in the way that Joe Biden had before. And now Donald Trump is essentially trying to reverse that. The reason why you need some sort of federal legislation, if you're a conservative who's concerned about these issues, is because you know that just doing this with respect to executive orders, it's going to be tit for tat. As soon as Donald Trump is out of office, someone else is going to do this. So the question becomes perhaps going for pluralism, perhaps trying to make some of these things less ideological is a better path forward on a range of issues, even a lot of the diversity. It's very hard because
I take your point, state by state experiment and all that, but I actually do think it's a civil rights issue for girls and for women, and they're already entitled to this protection under the existing law. It just must be enforced. But secondly, we've of course been through 4 years of Joe Biden where he implemented these so-called reforms into Title IX and policy and his, dear friend pressure on universities, and so Trump has to try to undo it on a national level, both through executive order and Title IX new guidance, and ideally through a statute which would stop this pendulum from swinging back and forth, and we can have predictability. Here is who we need to keep our eyes on, okay? Because the senators who are from blue states like New York and California are not going to be punished for their absurd vote. And keep in mind, they didn't even have the balls to allow a vote. That's what they were being asked on. Will you vote for cloture, which is where you need 60 votes in the Senate to say yes. That's it. They just needed to allow this to proceed to the Senate floor for a real vote and then let majority rule as it always should. They wouldn't. So they affirmatively stopped it because they knew that the Republicans did have the 53 votes. All 53 Republicans were ready to vote yes on this. And they couldn't get the chance to because they needed 7 Dems to cross over. So here are the true villains, the ones who are in swing states who must be targeted. I'm begging Elon to use some of his money, and he's 100% with me on this issue, 100% with me. I beg you to use some of your money to help defeat the following people. Arizona, both of them have to go. Ruben Gallego, it should have been Carrie Lake anyway. Well, she would have voted the right way. Mark Kelly, who I liked and who I still have a personal affinity for. I'm sorry, you need to go. If I could wave my magic wand, you're fired, sir, because you voted the wrong way. Georgia, John Ossoff, who's got a daughter but doesn't seem to give two shits about what happens to her on the sports field, and Raphael Warnock, who I think is going soon anyway. Michigan, Gary Peters, Alyssa Slotkin, you have to go too. You didn't show up. You didn't think it was important enough, even though you're one of the women in the Senate, to show up and support young girls trying to work their way up the power chain behind you. Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto, you too. Jackie Rosen, gone, if I have anything to say about it. Pennsylvania, fuck you, John Fetterman. You act like you're a man of the people. You're going to look out for the weak. You get it. You don't get shit. You really don't. That part of your brain still appears to be injured because you're going to let all these little girls go out there and get a traumatic brain injury? You, of all people who understand what a brain injury can do, screw you and your working class appeal. You don't get it at all. And then there's Wisconsin's Tammy Baldwin, who exposed herself as a complete idiot in those confirmation hearings that I went down to. She was one of the dopiest people we saw up there. I'm not surprised she landed in the wrong place. But those are swing state Democratic senators who ruined the protection of girls and women thanks to their votes on this issue. They ought to be targeted and they ought to be made to pay at the ballot box the next chance we get.
Oof. I think you need to show more emotion on this. Megyn, your pulse is lacking.
I think I gotta go.
Definitely, Pat. You show me a girl. You show me a 16-year-old girl with a traumatic brain injury and permanent paralysis because she's trying to play her high school game. I am angry. I'm furious with them.
I went today and looked for the arguments of the people who voted no, because I have a built-in skepticism of legislation in general, and then also stuff that appears to be sort of chasing headlines. First, the text of the bill is pretty innocuous. It's just like, hey, look, people who are born girls should play girls sports. People who are born boys should play boys sports. And if you receive Title IX, if you receive federal funding, you won't get it anymore if you don't follow those rules. Pretty simple. I mean, Trump's executive order was followed and adopted by the NCAA in basically a heartbeat. So it's already the rule of the land, and I don't see a whole lot of upset associated with that. So I went and looked at the...
there's an asterisk on that, but keep going.
The arguments for it, and there really weren't that many. There wasn't actually the principled libertarian arguments against it. It was mostly like, this is just a culture war issue. I think John Hickenlooper was saying that. It affects almost nobody. Fetterman said that it's important to show that you're an ally to trans people. I actually agree that it's important to show that you're an ally to all constituents, but I don't know what a vote on this has anything to do with that, honestly. It's like, do you have the legal rights to participate in society? That's kind of where that goes, as far as I'm concerned. And then I think it was Cortez Masto said something along the lines of, if this passes, then all girls are going to have their genitals inspected. And I just don't think that's so really... What's going to happen? I don't think that's what's happening right now in the NCAA.
Can I tell you something, Matt? Let me tell you something in response to that. It's exactly the opposite, because here's what's happening now. I know this because I am the mother of this aged child. You know, I have a 15 and a 13 and 11-year-old, and this is where this kind of thing becomes a problem. When they're little, you know, it's not an issue pre-puberty. When they're 7 and 8 and playing against each other, there's not a difference so much. A little difference there is, but it's not a dangerous difference between boys and girls at that age. But this is where my kids are, where it does become an issue. And what's happening now is if you have a, gender nonconforming girl who's out there, let's say on the field hockey field, parents are starting to worry that it's a boy. Is that a boy? Because there are a lot of moms now who are like, my child is not playing against a biological boy. It isn't safe, and I object to it. And so now questions get asked about, is that a girl or is that a boy? Now, inspect genitals. That's, of course, hysterical talk from the left. But there are questions. Is that a boy or is it a girl? And you're entitled to know as a parent who has a child out there. Because look at Peyton McNabb. Nobody wants their child to have that happen to them. Or the girl in Massachusetts who had all of her teeth knocked out on the hockey field by a boy pretending to be a girl, the other team. And the trauma to the rest of her teammates in watching her mouth fall out of her skull, which is what happened, with blood everywhere. Fuck you, John Fetterman, and your empathy for the trans people. Where's your empathy for that girl who has no more teeth in Massachusetts? Anyway, so if we know that boys are not allowed to play in girls' athletics, of course we will do what we have always done, which is just say, that's a more masculine looking girl. Maybe it's a lesbian. Maybe it's like a butch lesbian. Fine. Most women have zero problem with that. We love all women. We love the lesbians. We love the lipstick kind. We love the butch kind. We don't care. Welcome to the sports. Lead. Be great. Awesome. But if you have to wonder whether it's secretly a boy, it raises safety and other concerns that do make you get more, not inspecting on the child, but worried and inquisitional, and can lead to awkward, uncomfortable moments for everyone.
No, Megyn, I think you're making a really good case. And I will say that, admittedly, I don't follow this issue nearly as closely. My kids are pretty young. My daughter just turned 7. My son turned 3 today. And Leah is outclassing most boys her age in every athletic engagement. But the thing that I was surprised to learn today, actually reading up on this a little bit, is that even the Biden administration had more than entertained the possibility of actually implementing some kind of restrictions on the policies that they were putting forward in this area, because they had the same kinds of concerns that there would be situations where you'd had a boy who'd gone through puberty who then decided to do some sort of transition, and as a result would have a particularly unfair advantage in certain sports and could endanger some of their fellow athletes. So the fact that they were even willing to entertain that sort of thing does give, I think, some credence to the arguments that are being leveled from the right now. And it also suggests that there was probably, and I would imagine continues to be, a real opportunity to actually get some Democratic support for a piece of legislation that makes sense to them. As Matt said, the one that does exist seems fairly innocuous, but perhaps there's a way to actually barter to get something done here, which I think, ultimately getting the win is far more important, I think, than just having the battle and, losing a close vote. So maybe they do come back and actually get this done by looking to whatever model
they
the Biden
wrote it intentionally to be as non-controversial as possible, so that they didn't put all these weird things in there that would allow the Democrats to wiggle out of it. It's very simple. It's the thing that 80% of the populace supports. And these Dems all voted no. Not one showed courage. On this subject, before we move on from it, just this week, this is via The Lion, it's a new media outlet that publishes articles on news and culture. They reported that in Southern California, at the track meet out there, a junior who goes by A.B. Hernandez, who's a biological male, finished first in the high jump, the long jump, and the triple jump. The triple jump performance, which I'm about to show to you, was 8 feet further than the runner-up. 8 feet he jumped further than the girl. Watch it.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's...
And you hear somebody say that's just wrong. Because they
California response.
no girl's going to be able to compete against that. Here is A.B. Hernandez after the meet.
Like, how are you using all that momentum and just all that energy to try to put into a great year this year?
I just keep telling myself, you are number one, and it's yours to lose. So.
Just the 40-foot, jumping that in the triple, keeping that consistency with that, hitting that 40-foot mark. What's just your expectations for the rest of the year?
Expectations just to keep my phases longer, push more, work out more, get further, hopefully hit a 41 this year if it's possible, preferably at state so that I can possibly win.
Okay, and then I'm just going to make 2 other points quickly. That's why this A.B. Hernandez is being allowed to play. Yes, woke ideology and all that, but also these ridiculous schools who want wins. There is a school in Westchester. It's a private school, and they fired their athletic director because he was against letting boys onto the girls' teams for safety and fairness issues. And they wanted boys on the girls' teams because they want to win the rugby championship or the ice hockey championship. I can't remember which one it was. It must be ice hockey because rugby's not big here. They want to win the ice hockey championship, the girls' team. And the more boys they can put on the team, the better. And here's the second thing. Staying in California, there's the San Francisco Waldorf girls basketball team. We have covered this team in the past. They've been dominating thanks to a boy named Harry, who is on the team, who typically averages 20 points a game. 20 points a game. But he was out in the last week of February. And by the way, in January, he scored 29 points. That was his average. But he did not play in the recent playoff game. And guess what? His team lost by 26 points. You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is sinking. And you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs already this year. It's not too late for you, too. And you could have Birch Gold help you diversify into physical gold. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k in whole or in part into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, and for no money out of pocket. One recent 5-star review said Birch Gold was, quote, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the letters MK to the number 989898. There is no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, text MK to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.